Welcome to this podcast on Book 3 of Who Am I? Rosy's Story, a Child of the Sicilian Wheel. This book, you can see it properly, there you go. So now we're going to find about Margherita and Rollo, which are her biological parents. Well, there is a purpose for everything in life under heaven and the universe when we learn to yield to it. When we become like the autumn leaves and let go and let God. Margherita knew she was meant for more in this life, not just to be a queen. She grew up in a castle where everything was given to her. A doting mother, a loving father. What more could she want out of this life? She knew in her heart that life had bigger plans for her. Hey, bigger than becoming a queen? She was betrothed to the prince, and his kingdom would be joined with hers, creating an economy for both kingdoms and the people. Life took an unexpected turn. One day when she was walking on the cliffs looking at the local tuna fishermen with their nets. The wind was very strong, warm and dry. Standing on this mountain range, Margherita could see that the fishermen having difficulty raising their nets. She glanced and saw that a young man was walking towards her. She felt slightly annoyed as she wanted time to reflect on the conversation she'd had early in the morning with her mother and father. They wanted her to marry in the summer, which was just a few months away. She liked the prince, but felt that they had not much in common, except for the communion of the two kingdoms. "Buongiorno, signorina," said the young man. "Buongiorno," Margherita replied. He spoke Italian, but did not look Italian. He had flaming red hair, green eyes, just like the Aegean Islands. Their eyes locked. She felt anxious butterflies buzzing in her stomach that wanted to start to dance. And Margherita had never felt like that before. The young man stretched out his hand to Margherita. "Mi chiamo Rollo," he said. "Piacere, mi chiamo Margherita," he replied. "Cosa fai qui?" Rollo said. "Guardo ai pescatori che stanno pescando," Margherita replied. He spoke excellent Italian. Somehow she knew he was not from here, as he had a very strong accent. The trace seemed to Margherita to be a French accent. She felt irritated that he had asked her this question, as it was none of his business what she was doing here. She started to walk away and he said to her, "Di dove sei?" "Non è affare tuoi da dove io sono," Margherita replied, very irritated. "Io sto cercando il re di Favignana," Rollo said. Margherita replied, "È mio padre." "Allora facciamo una passeggiata e andiamo a incontrare a tuo padre." She thought, "Why do you want to speak to my father? What is your business here?" She decided she did the right thing and walked him to see her father. She thought to herself, my father might not even receive him, all this for nothing anyway. He was a little rugged looking, not from anywhere near Italy nor the islands, as men dressed very elegantly. He looked courageous and daring, bold and fearless, and had a large jaw. His physical appearance was very masculine, with long red hair, a beard, and he was very tall. She felt very uncomfortable that they were walking without a chaperone. He must have sensed that she was feeling. "Non ti preoccupare," Rollo said. "Sono una persona che ha integrità." "Mi devi scusare, non mi sono presentato," Completamente a lei, signorina. Sono il principe Rollo di Normandia. Margherita stood for a minute. She felt the blood rushing from her head to her toes. He was a prince. Tuo padre e io abbiamo un appuntamento. Mio padre è il re di Normandia. Mi ha mandato a parlare con lui. Well, she thought, what the winds of change have brought today. Rollo looked at her and said, dopo aver visto tuo padre, voglio che tu mi mostra la tua isola. Like hell, she thought, I'm not taking you anywhere. He touched her hand and she felt electricity spurge through her body. They arrived at her castello. Their castle is called Il Castello di Santa Caterina, named after her nonna Caterina. Her father was outside when he saw them both walking together. He had a very disapproving look when he saw Margherita. Rollo at once saw that the king was in sight and quickly walked faster, stretched out his hand to greet him. Buongiorno. Margherita felt it was little odd that the prince had manners, as he was not from here. And once he had said that he was from Normandy, she knew he was Viking prince. That explained that she felt uneasy and knew of their reputation around women. But Rollo did not have that roughness around his eyes. They looked very kind. Margherita was told that Rollo was to stay on business for a few days. Her task was to keep him occupied. She felt it was odd, but later had found out by one of the servants that he had asked the king if his daughter would take him around the island and show him around. The king did not like it, but Rollo was the king of Normandy's son, and he did not want to offend the king. As their custom was not like his, a few borders needed to be considered, as each culture was diverse. Margherita was not happy, as she felt a very uneasiness around Rollo. She did not like how he looked at her, and he irritated her. They spent a few days together. She had never been in the presence of men except her father. He was very nice, and she liked being with him. Funny that she had felt any different. Love blossomed between the two continents and diverse cultures at a time when it was not permissible. Spring wildflowers grow wild. The blossoms around the mountainside, and love. Where do you go from here when their future has already been set? There is no way they can build a life together. It is impossible, as they are the future of their country. No hope for a future. They could not make a life for each other when their family's future was built, not even for the seed that had been sowed in Margherita. It came out that Rollo had to leave Margherita. None of them knew what to do. Their love was not enough. Rollo wanted to escape. Margherita could not, as she was the future of her kingdom. Duty played the biggest part in each of their lives, and they wore the cloak of duty in their souls and in their hearts. There is no escape, no way out, and no solution except a road that would lead to pain. Margherita would go to Polizzi Generosa, a place far from home, and to do her pregnancy term there, and leave the child at the wheel, at the rota. She would tell her parents that she needed time to reflect on her future and the marriage she had been betrothed to. Rollo would go home to Normandy and continue his service as the future king. Lives that have been changed through the navigations of one's choices, the suffering of one's choices we make when we are duty to a kingdom. As we know, we have choices. In those times, there were no choices. And the kingdom and the freedom we experience today is built on the sacrifices of our ancestors. Rollo's heart aches for Margherita and the child she was bearing. He knew he had to go down this road, one that was bigger than himself and his heart. He had to leave it in the hands of God. Margherita had to go through her pregnancy and give up her child for the future of the kingdom. Two roads, and what about the child? How could Margherita give up her child? She would battle this question all her life, which would almost destroy her, as she would never be the same person. She had changed. She felt overwhelmed, and depression had hit her heart and mind. The hopelessness of the situation and giving up her child had suffocated her soul. Torment had become her friend, and she had to believe in her heart that God had a bigger plan. Belief and faith had to be the key for the chance to come in and divinely change all their circumstances. Margherita knew that if she waited for the tides of time, she would find hope that things would change, as life never stays the same. She remembered her Nonna Caterina as she lovingly touched the necklace she gave her before she passed. She gave her counsel, guidance, and knowledge as the family's matriarch. This was all sewed into Margherita. She spent her entire childhood under the wings of Nonna Caterina. Nonna Caterina used to say to her that this was her schooling. She desired her to know and understand how life worked, queens governed, and how women impacted the present and the future of any kingdom. Nonna Caterina would say that history is there to teach us about how we govern and dictate the future. Margherita knew that the unborn child within had already so much knowledge without being born. As Nonna Caterina would say, that when you become a mother, your child can hear you. Speak to it, teach it, sing it, talk to the unborn child, as they are the extension of the branches of our ancestors. What she did know within her heart was that her pregnancy had to be one of serenity. She wanted her unborn child a pregnancy that was serene, one that a child could feel love. She started to worry about the future of her child. Who would look after her? In the hands of strangers. She too had to believe in her faith that God would look after their child. Tragedy had struck in 4 families and 4 kingdoms. There are times in life where there are no answers. These are the times when faith in God is required to act in our lives. Nonna Caterina would say, when there is no solution to a challenge, the rivers of time are required in these cases. In Margherita and Rollo's case, God had to play the biggest role through time, as he is the master of time, patience, prayers. These are the cornerstones that are built from the faith and choices. Trusting in God that the outcome would be for the benefit of all, and that one day destiny would bring them all together again. These are the aspirations that they all had in their hearts. The last time that Margherita had spent time with Rollo, they both prayed and asked for hope to enter their lives and that of their child, and hoping that one day their choices would be their strengths. Right now, their choices were purging their hearts and their lives, and many years would pass as they had forged a path in their souls. as sorrow and sadness would be their guides for many years. Margherita would spend many times sitting on the edge of the cliffs, waiting for the tides to turn. Rollo would spend many years fighting in battle, winning many victories, sadly not being able to be the victor of his own destiny. God had other plans. Little did they know of God's plans for their lives. Purpose and destiny are the crossroads for these kingdoms. When Margherita left her child at the wheel, she left her Nonna Caterina's necklace with her. She knew that this would one day be the key. She watched with her servants for a few days as she had left the child, her daughter, to see who would take her. When she saw Maria coming up the hill and walking with a pain that only a mother can know, she knew that this woman would take her child. Funny how I just wanted to leave it. No answers, no fixing up, leave it. Just like our own lives, how sometimes we've just got to let it go, and time or things might not even come to a halt. But there's a time and a purpose for everything under heaven, Ecclesiastics say. So I knew that by just leaving things open, it shows us sometimes there is no closure in life. Well, we don't know yet because I have a lot of plans for this book. But in a time when there were no choices, it was the 1800s in the Bourbon era of Sicily, where choices were not one. You were born with the cloak of duty. Whatever you were born into, whatever family you were born into, that was it. So if you were born into a noble family, you were betrothed, you didn't have a choice of where you were going, who you were going to marry, or your heart, who it chose. It had to be for the families. And this is the case for Margherita and Rollo. How blessed we are today that we can choose who we want to love, who to love, and how we want to love. Where so many generations in the past had no choices, and we today have choices, which we stand on the foundations of our ancestors. So the next book I will read to you will be the conclusion, but I wanted to read to you a poem my daughter had wrote when she was 10 years old, Josie. It's titled Wondering Why, and I'll leave you with this. I hope you enjoy this book. You can find it on Amazon.com under Carmela D'Amore, Who Am I? Rosy's Story, and I would suggest that you get the paperback novel. Is this meant to be that I am like this? Is it meant to be the words that are coming out of my lips? Is it true that I am beautiful for being who I am? I am happy to be me, but some days people just don't understand. I think to myself and wonder why God has put me on this earth. And then I turn to the sky and see all the beauty that is all around me. And then I know that I was meant to be. She was 10 years old when she wrote this. Amazing daughter. I'll see you on the next video.